"You cannot step into the same river twice," declared Heraclitus, the ancient Greek philosopher. With this simple yet profound statement, he encapsulated his philosophy of constant flux. Everything, he argued, is in a perpetual state of change. Like a river that continuously flows, reality itself is a dynamic and ever-shifting entity. Nothing remains static, and everything we perceive is subject to the relentless current of time. Heraclitus used the image of fire to illustrate his point. Fire is never truly at rest. It dances and flickers, constantly consuming and transforming. Similarly, he believed, the cosmos is in a constant state of becoming, a ceaseless process of creation and destruction. This concept of flux, of an ever-changing universe, forms the bedrock of Heraclitus's philosophy. His ideas, though radical for his time, resonated deeply with the cyclical nature of the natural world. The changing seasons, the waxing and waning of the moon, the cycle of birth, decay and rebirth, all pointed towards a universe in constant motion. Heraclitus recognized this dynamic essence of reality, challenging the prevailing notion of a static and unchanging universe. His philosophy of flux offered a new way of understanding the world, one that embraced change as the fundamental principle of existence. Heraclitus's concept of constant flux, while intuitively grasped through observations of the natural world, presents a fundamental challenge to human nature. We as human beings crave stability and permanence. We seek to build solid foundations, establish routines, and cling to the familiar. Our minds seek order in the chaos, attempting to impose structure and predictability on a world in constant motion. This innate desire for stability stems from our need for security and control. A predictable world feels safe, while a constantly changing one can feel threatening and disorienting. We fear the unknown, the loss of what we hold dear, the impermanence of all things. This fear often leads us to resist change, even when it may be necessary or beneficial. We build walls, both literal and metaphorical, in an attempt to hold back the tide of change. We create institutions, traditions, and belief systems that provide a sense of order and permanence. Yet, Heraclitus would argue, these structures are ultimately illusions. They offer a temporary reprieve from the relentless flow of time, but cannot truly shield us from the reality of change. The river keeps flowing, regardless of our attempts to dam it or divert its course. Recognizing this inherent tension between our desire for stability and the reality of flux is crucial to understanding both the world around us and our place within it. Heraclitus's philosophy of constant flux stood in stark contrast to the ideas of his contemporary Parmenides, who believed in a single, unchanging reality. This philosophical debate laid the groundwork for one of the most influential philosophical dichotomies in Western thought, Heraclitus's flux versus Plato's forms. Plato, a student of Socrates, sought to reconcile the seemingly contradictory views of Heraclitus and Parmenides. He agreed with Heraclitus that the physical world is in a constant state of change, but he also believed in a higher, unchanging reality, the realm of forms. These forms, according to Plato, are perfect, eternal, and unchanging blueprints that exist outside of time and space. The physical world for Plato is merely a shadow of this true reality. The objects and experiences we perceive are simply imperfect copies of their corresponding forms. A beautiful flower, for example, is but a pale imitation of the form of beauty itself. While Heraclitus saw change as the fundamental principle of reality, Plato believed in an underlying order and permanence. This difference in perspectives has shaped Western thought for centuries, influencing fields ranging from metaphysics and epistemology to art and literature. Centuries later, and continents away, Siddhartha Gautama, the Buddha, arrived at a philosophical understanding that resonated with Heraclitus's concept of flux. Central to Buddhist teachings is the concept of anicca, often translated as impermanence or constant change. The Buddha taught that everything is in a state of flux, our thoughts, emotions, bodies, and the world around us. This impermanence, however, is not something to be feared, but rather embraced. According to the Buddha, clinging to the illusion of permanence is the root of suffering. When we attach ourselves to things that are constantly changing, we inevitably experience disappointment, loss, and pain. The path to liberation, the Buddha taught, lies in recognizing and accepting the impermanence of all things. By letting go of our attachment to fixed ideas, desires, and even our sense of self, we can break free from the cycle of suffering. Buddhism offers a practical approach to dealing with the reality of flux. Practices like meditation encourage mindfulness, a state of being present with our experiences without judgment or attachment. By cultivating mindfulness, we can learn to observe the ever-changing nature of reality with greater clarity and acceptance.